Welcome. Welcome to the deep dive.
Yeah.
Ever caught yourself saying, I'm on the party, or maybe I'll meet you on Tuesday, and you see that slightly, confused look.
Oh, yeah.
Those tiny words, prepositions, that they're like these mini linguistic puzzles. They can trip up anyone, really.
Absolutely. Even advanced speakers.
So today, we're diving deep. We want to try and solve the mystery of in, on, and at. But forget memorizing endless rules just for a moment.
Right.
Our mission is, well, to give you one powerful mental model. Think of it like a linguistic zoom lens, maybe.
I like that. A zoom lens.
Yeah. To unlock how these prepositions actually work, whatever the context, so you can speak with, real precision and confidence. Okay, let's unpack this.
Exactly. And what's so fascinating, I think, is how these three specific words can have so much overlap, especially, like you said, with time and place.
Yeah.
It's really not just about memorizing rules. It's more about understanding the subtle shifts in scale and specificity.
Dual and specificity. Okay.
Yeah. So that zoom lens analogy, it's perfect. Because in, on, and at really do help us focus, moving from a really broad view right down to a pinpoint. Getting these right is, well, it's key for clear communication.
So let's start with the widest lens then, in.
Mm-hmm.
When I think in, I always picture something being completely surrounded, inside boundaries.
Yeah.
Feels very general, kind of encompassing, like a big container.
That's a perfect way to put it. In is definitely our wide-angle lens. It generally refers to something larger, more general, or an enclosed space.
Right.
It gives you that idea of being surrounded by something or existing within its boundaries. Let's think about its spatial uses first. We use in for enclosed spaces, especially, three-dimensional ones.
Okay.
Like the books are in the box. They're literally inside that container.
Mm-hmm. Inside.
Or she lives in an apartment. She's residing within that structure. Even we're sitting in the car. That's when you're fully enclosed inside the vehicle's interior. You're inside that container.
Okay, so being physically inside something, that's the key. Makes perfect sense. And it's not just small containers then, like you said, in an apartment. But what about, say, in New York City?
Absolutely. In scales right up. We use it for larger, broad geographic areas, so cities, countries, continents.
Yeah.
He lives in New York City, means his home is within the city limits. Or they traveled in France. Their travels happened inside the country. It's still about being contained, within a larger defined area.
And liquids. I'd say, there's sugar in my coffee?
Yep. Indicates immersion or inclusion within a fluid or some other substance.
Immersion, okay.
So she's swimming in the ocean. She's immersed in the water. The fish swim in the pond. They move within that body of water. It's all about being contained within that substance.
Right. So it really does come back to that feeling of being enclosed or surrounded.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if it's a box, a country, or, well, coffee.
Exactly.
What about more general areas, places that aren't so clearly defined, like a garden or an office?
That's a great question because it really highlights the general area aspect of in. We use it for general areas or environments, even if they're less sort of rigidly defined than a box.
Yeah.
It implies being within an understood setting or context.
Mhm.
I work in an office just refers to the general workplace environment.
Right. The type of place.
Yeah, the children are playing in the garden means they're simply within that garden's area. You can even be reading in bed, positioned within the general space of the bed.
And I've definitely heard in used with media, too. Like, I saw it in a movie.
Yeah.
Which isn't in a physical container, obviously, but it kind of makes sense as inside the content.
Exactly. For media, when you're talking about content that's contained within a publication or a broadcast,
Mm-hmm.
so there's a good article in the newspaper. The article is part of the newspaper's content. I saw it in a movie, implies the event happened within the film's story.
Or like in the final chapter.
Precisely. The character appears in the final chapter of the book. It's about content being inside the medium itself.
Okay, that covers the spatial uses of in pretty well, I think. So what about when we shift our lens to time? Because in is definitely used there too, but usually for longer, less precise periods, which fits with that wide-angle view, right?
That's absolutely right. When we talk about temporal uses, in keeps that wide-angle feel.
Yeah.
It indicates a longer duration or just a general placement within a bigger time frame.
Okay.
So for months, seasons, years, centuries, you'd say, my birthday is in July. It happened sometime within that month. It
Wow.
snows in winter. Or he was born in 1990. We also say, we live in the 21st century, and even something broad like the Roman Empire flourished in ancient times.
Mm-hmm. Big blocks of time and periods of the day. like morning or afternoon, I'd say, I usually exercise in the morning.
Yes, for general periods of the day. I usually exercise in the morning, or she studies in the afternoon, and they go out in the evening. Now, here's a little puzzle we need to come back to later.
Uh-oh.
Why do we say at night and not in the night?
The classic exception.
Exactly. That's a tricky one that often catches learners out. We'll get to that.
Okay, good. Glad we flagged it. What about when you say something like, I'll be back in an hour?
Right. That's in, used for future time, indicating a duration until something happens.
Okay, duration until.
It specifies the length of time that will pass before an event occurs. So the project will be finished in 2 weeks, means after 2 weeks have passed. The train departs in 10 minutes, meaning 10 minutes from now. It's about a period before an event contained within that future time frame.
Okay. So we've had our wide-angle view with in. Let's shift gears. Let's zoom in a bit more, maybe. Let's dive into on. My mental picture for on is always about surfaces or very specific points in time. It feels like contact, like being positioned on top of something.
You're hitting the core idea perfectly. On is our standard zoom lens, let's say.
Standard zoom. Okay.
It generally refers to a surface, a specific day or date, or, interestingly, certain types of transportation, mainly large public transport. It absolutely implies contact with a surface or being on a specific point on a timeline.
Right.
The fundamental spatial meaning is surfaces. The book is on the table, direct contact with the table's top. The picture is on the wall. It's attached to or hanging from the wall's surface. Even the cat is sleeping on the rug, resting upon the rug surface.
So not just flat surfaces then.
Right.
Vertical ones too, like the picture on the wall.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And floors, like my office is on the 3rd floor.
Precisely. Any defined surface, horizontal or vertical, and yes, we use on for floors of a building.
Okay.
My office is on the 3rd floor, or they live on the ground floor. And just a quick side note for listeners, that ground floor in the UK, often called the first floor in American English, so context matters.
Oh, right. Good point. Now, here's a common tripping point for me and probably for others. Transportation. We said in the car, but I say on the bus. Why? That always felt like such a random rule.
Ah, the classic distinction. And it ties right back into our zoom lens idea, actually.
Really? Okay.
You use in for smaller private vehicles, places where you're typically seated and fully enclosed. Think of it as being inside the vehicle, like in a car or in a taxi.
Okay, in close.
But you use on for larger public transport, places where you can stand up, walk around, move more freely. You are on the platform or deck of these vehicles. So on a bus, on a train, on a plane, or on a ship. Also things like on a bicycle or on a motorcycle, because you're literally on top of them. That ability to stand up or move around is kind of the key differentiator.
That makes so much more sense. You can stand up on a bus, but you're pretty much stuck in a car. Okay, that standing up rule. That's a bit of a game changer.
It often helps clarify it, yeah.
What about media again? We had in the newspaper earlier for the content insight, but I also hear on TV.
You're picking up on the nuance perfectly. With media, on is often used when referring to content being broadcast or displayed via a specific medium or platform.
Their platform.
So, the news was on TV, or I heard it on the radio, or the information is on the internet. It's about the content being presented on that platform. Now, if you're talking about a specific item within a larger publication, like his comments were published on page 3 of the newspaper, you'd use on for the specific page, indicating its surface location within the paper.
Got it. So on the page itself, like a surface, makes sense. And locations next to water, like London is on the Thames.
Yes, on indicates a location adjacent to or bordering a body of water. It implies proximity. So London is on the River Thames as it borders the river.
Right.
Or the cabin is on the lake, meaning it's located right by the lakeside.
Okay. And finally, for spatial uses, the classic direction thing.
On your left or on the right.
Exactly. On is used to specify left or right side or direction. The shop is on your left or turn on the right. It pinpoints a position relative to something, still kind of maintaining that on a surface or on a line feel. Perfect. Now let's pivot to time again. Temporal uses for on. These are generally more specific than in, right? Still within that sort of standard zoom range.
Yes, exactly. For temporal uses, on is for specific days and dates. It emphasizes their individuality.
Okay.
So for specific days of the week, it's I have a meeting on Monday or they're coming on Friday. This also works for a specific part of a specific day, like what are you doing on Tuesday evening?
Right, specific day and full dates. Like birthdays. My birthday's on October 26th.
Correct. For specific dates, including the day, month, maybe the year, her birthday is on October 26th, or the event is scheduled on January 1st, 2026.
And holidays. Do you exchange gifts on Christmas Day?
Yes, for specific holidays when you mean the day itself. We exchange gifts on Christmas Day, or there's a parade on Thanksgiving. It emphasizes that particular calendar day.
Okay, got it. We've zoomed from wide-angle in to standard on. Now for our laser-focused pinpoint at this one really feels like it's, nailing down an exact spot or a precise moment.
That's a great analogy, the laser focus. At generally refers to a specific point, a precise time, or a location that has a specific purpose or activity associated with it.
Purpose or activity, okay.
It truly indicates a more precise or pinpointed location or moment. For spatial uses, think specific points or locations. I'll meet you at the corner. That's a precise intersection. She's waiting at the bus stop, a specific designated point. The shop is at the end of the street, a pinpointed location.
And addresses, specific house numbers, like at 10 Downing Street.
Yes, exactly. When you include the house number, at specifies the exact property or address. They live at 10 Downing Street, the precise address. The package was delivered at 123 Main Street, the exact spot. It's the most precise location reference.
Right. This brings up something important, I think, that trips up a lot of learners. How does at work with places like work or school? Because you don't usually say in work, right? You say at work, but then maybe in the office. What's the trick there?
That's a crucial distinction, and it ties right into that purpose aspect of at.
Purpose again?
Yeah. When you say at work, school, home, you're typically implying you're there for the usual purpose or activity of that place.
Okay.
For instance, I'm at work, so I can't talk right now, means you're actively doing your job.
Right. Busy working.
However, in the office classroom house emphasizes just physically being inside the building or the specific space. It doesn't necessarily imply the activity. So if you say, oh, I left my keys in the office, I need to go back, you're talking about the physical location of the keys inside the building.
Well, not that you're still working.
Exactly. It's about presence for a purpose at versus just being physically inside in.
That makes perfect sense now. It's the activity or intent, not just the building.
Yeah.
And other public places, like at the airport or at the beach.
Exactly. At is used for certain public places, often implying an activity or purpose. He's at the airport usually means he's there to travel or meet someone, etc. We stayed at a hotel lodging at that specific type of place. There were many people at the beach, present for fun, recreation. It often emphasizes the function or the event happening at the location, like at a party or at a concert.
Right, right. And the most common one, perhaps, at home.
That's a very common and consistent usage. I'm at home. It indicates being at your residence, usually implying you're just there in your personal space.
Okay, so if at is about precision in space, it must be about precision in time too, right?
Absolutely. For temporal uses, at is for precise clock times or very specific points in time.
Like,
The meeting starts at 9 a.m., the exact hour. She usually goes to bed at midnight, the precise turning point of the day. We can even say, let's meet at lunchtime, which is a specific understood point, even if it's not an exact clock time. Or at dusk, at dawn.
precise moments. And what about holidays? We had on Christmas Day, but I know people also say at Christmas.
That's the nuance right there. At is used for holidays when you mean the general period of time, the season, rather than the specific day itself.
The season.
So, we visit family at Christmas means sometime during the Christmas holiday period, there's a special atmosphere at Easter. Refers to the whole Easter holiday time. It's the pinpointed holiday season or general time.
Got it. And now, let's tackle that tricky one we flagged earlier. At night. That one catches so many people. Why does night break the pattern we saw with morning, afternoon, evening using in?
Ah, yes, at night. It's a consistent exception. The reason at night is standard. Well, it's often thought that night is perceived differently. It's seen as a more defined, darker period, almost like a specific, singular block of time within the 24-hour cycle.
So less fluid than morning or afternoon.
Kind of, yeah. Unlike the broader, more fluid periods of morning, afternoon, and evening that you were in, night feels more like a specific point or a condition, the condition of darkness, so it gets the pinpoint at.
Fascinating how language makes those little distinctions. And I know there's that difference for weekend, too, depending on where you are.
Yes, the weekend, another fun one. There's a dialect difference. British English speakers usually say at the weekend.
Right.
Whereas American English speakers typically prefer on the weekend. Both are correct in their respective dialects, but they still refer to that specific period of time.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting for you, listening and trying to untangle these. We've explored in as wide angle, on as standard zoom, and at as the pinpoint. How do we pull this all together with that core zoom lens idea to solve those common headaches?
Okay, if you remember just one thing from today's deep dive, make it this zoom lens approach. It really can help.
Yeah.
In is your wide angle shot. It covers a large area or a long period. Think inside something general. So in the city, in July, in a room.
Wide angle inside. Got it.
On is your standard zoom. It focuses on a surface or a specific point on a broader timeline, like a day. Think atop or directly upon. Examples.
On the table, on Monday, on the internet.
Standard zoom, surface, or specific day.
Right. And at is your laser-focused pinpoint. It zeroes right in on an exact spot, a precise time, or location tied to a specific purpose or activity. So at the corner, at 3 p.m., at work. Pinpoint, exact location or time or purpose. That zoom lens analogy really does help clarify things, actually.
Good.
Let's take those tricky examples again, the ones that often confuse learners, and apply this lens. First, that transportation puzzle in a car versus on a bus.
Absolutely. Let's look through the lens. In a car is your wide-angle view, in a sense. You're fully enclosed within that small private space.
Right. Inside.
But on a bus is more like the standard zoom. You're on the platform or the deck. You can move around like being on a surface. It's about that level of enclosure versus freedom of movement.
So simple when you put it like that. And what about at work versus in the office? That one still feels a little subtle.
It is subtle, definitely. But the pinpoint lens helps clarify it. At work uses that pinpoint lens because it's about the purpose or the activity. You are at the specific event or state of working.
Okay. Event of working.
Whereas in the office is more like the wide angle or standard zoom. It just means you are physically inside that building. It doesn't matter what you're doing.
That makes perfect sense now. Presence for a purpose. At versus just being physically inside in. Okay. And circling back one last time to that key exception, at night. Why does night get the pinpoint lens when morning, afternoon, evening get the wide angle in?
Yeah, excellent point to revisit. The reason at night uses the pinpoint lens, as we touched on, is likely because night is often perceived as the singular, distinct block of time, almost a fixed point of darkness in the daily cycle. Morning, afternoon, evening. They feel broader, more fluid periods that you are in. So it really comes down to how we conceptually frame the duration and distinctness of that time.
It's truly amazing how these tiny words carry so much meaning, isn't it?
It really is.
It just highlights the precision you need in English. Well, this deep dive has definitely cut through a lot of the fog around in, on, and at for me.
Right.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener, as a learner?
Well, mastering these prepositions, like anything complex in language, it really takes consistent practice. You need keen observation of context and, honestly, lots of exposure to native English usage, reading, listening.
Practice and exposure.
Exactly. While these guidelines, this zoom lens idea, provide a really strong foundation, the nuances often become clearer through just using the language. But if you're ever in doubt, the best thing to do, pull out that mental zoom lens. Ask yourself, am I talking about a general area or time in, a surface or specific day, or a really precise point, time, or activity at?
Right.
Applying that core principle, that zoom in or out, it will guide you to the correct choice most of the time.
That's such a helpful framework.
Yeah.
Really practical. This journey through in, on, and at has definitely shown how these small words can massively impact your clarity and fluency in English. So here's something to think about. The next time you're forming a sentence, really challenge yourself. Think. Am I pointing to a general area with my wide angle in, a specific surface or day with my standard zoom on, or a precise pinpoint with my laser-focused at? What stands out to you is the trickiest pair, and how does that zoom lens idea help you figure it out?